As my music starts to fade out, welcome back to another episode of the Sports Consultancy, AMSC, commercialisation of sports series with me, Anthony Morrissey, the CEO and founder of AMSC. It's getting very cold here in Gothenburg, as I'm sure everyone that's around there will know. It's starting to snow, so the snow season starts kicking in. But you'll have seen, if you go onto my website, quite a few lovely interviews to keep you nice and warm, get a cup of coffee and look through some really fantastic people that I've spoken to in the last couple of months, and I'm really honoured to have them all there. They're all up on my YouTube channel, they're all up and everything else, and you can see it all scrolling at the very bottom. Anyway, you're not really here to listen to me talk. You listen to hear I'm actually going to bring along as my guest. Today, I'm absolutely honoured again to have somebody who is a legend. Is a difficult word that's used within Irish rugby, but this person definitely knows his sport, definitely knows rugby, definitely knows everything around the background to it, but also from playing the sport at a highly professional, successful career, then moving into off-field and coaching and along the lines of that. So it's someone that I'm really looking forward to speak to. It's someone I've really wanted to get onto the vlog or podcast, whatever you call it, for as much as I possibly can. So I'm delighted that he's able to give me some time. So I'll let him introduce himself more than anything else. Jerry Flannery, how are you doing?
And how are you? How are things?
Not a bother at all. Not a bother at all. Massively appreciate your time for jumping in. So first of all, I'll say that to you. Going right back to Limerick when you were a young fella, and kind of starting off when you were getting involved with sport. What's your earliest memories of sport for you growing up? Is there anything that stands out to you from memory that allows you to look back?
I think my old fellow was big into rugby. He was into Presentation RFC. They're a small junior club in Limerick, so he used to bring me out to their games. And when I was too small to play, I would just be sitting in amongst all the gear bags on the sideline and just doing a bit of tackling and just messing around until I was old enough to go out and play with them. So just been out in Ratchur in Limerick and just sitting on the sideline watching rugby.
And from Limerick being such a massive rugby city and being such a massive sports city, was it something that you tried to play as much sport as you possibly could, or was rugby so ingrained within your family that was a sport you knew you wanted to get involved with?
I think because my father's interest in rugby, that's what got me into the sport. I think you go on a bit of a journey, and for me, watching Ireland at Italia 90 and USA 94 just massively piqued my interest in football. I became a big Chelsea fan, but I was always playing rugby in the background. I was pretty fanatical about Chelsea when I was a kid. But then as I went through secondary school, as I began secondary school in St. Munchin's, it was just it was the school where Anthony Foley was captain of the senior team when I went in to school. So rugby was massive in St. Munchin's. So I think you just saw how much it meant to everyone else as well then. So, and I was better. I wasn't great at rugby, but I was a lot better at rugby than I was at football. So I started to focus primarily on rugby then. But I played all sports. Like I played football, I played a bit of tennis, I used to go running quite a lot. I tried my hand at rowing a little bit. But as I got older, I definitely knew that rugby was the game that I was going to focus on.
And then coming through school system, because the school system, as you rightly said, in St. Munchin's and Anthony Foley's name connected to that school even added to even more popularity to it. But St. Munchin's was such a massive rugby school. Was that the first area where going into kind of the school's cup system, was that something that you just wanted to play, or did you feel that was an area that, I know professionalism hadn't really kicked in at that stage, but were you looking then to go on and just play AIL and just enjoy the sport, or did you see a career in this long term back then?
Well, when I first went into Munchin's, I was probably 12, and I saw the crowds going to the senior cup games and the junior cup games, and Munchin's were very competitive at that level. So I saw that, and I was like, "Wow, I'd love to play in this. I'd love to play in these competitions." And then I think when I was actually playing in the junior cup, or maybe when I was 14 or 15, rugby went professional. The 95 World Cup and rugby went professional, and I thought then that it was the thing that I was the further I went down the line with rugby, the more I trained at it, the more I began to love it, and the more I said that's what I want to do for a living.
Were you always in the front row? Were you always a hooker? Was that always your position?
No, I played back row. I played back row. I played prop. Then I went to back row. And then around 15, 16, I kind of realized that like I probably was never going to be tall enough to be a a decent back row. So I thought that hooker would be the best use of whatever abilities I had.
And then going on, your first few caps professionally then would have been with Connacht. But when you came back to Munster in 2003, what was the feeling like representing your home province, your home area? Was it something you felt an abundance of pride amongst the family, or was it more a case of a bit of kind of nervousness to get involved with what at the time were really, really well known and well known players involved in that? Was it getting involved with Munster? Was that the big deal, or was it back then the Shannon connection that would have helped you get into that feeling?
I think I think it probably started with Shannon, with the schools rugby, with seeing Axel playing for Munchins, seeing Axel playing for Shannon, and then the game was naturally, I suppose, transitioning towards more of a focus on the provincial rugby with Munster. Um, for me, initially, I was training with Munster from when I was about 18. So then when Woody was there, I knew that there'd be no real opportunities. So I went up to Connacht, but I had actually played. I'd made my debut against Gloucester in a senior game in a preseason friendly. Then I knew I wasn't going to get much game time, and I went up to Connacht then. And when I came back, I was just buzzing to be back playing with Munster, to be back in. All my mates are Munster fans, all my family are Munster fans, so it was big, yeah.
And also, one of the other interviews I did spoke about the importance of taking your opportunity. So sometimes it's about luck being in the right place, but then taking that opportunity to really stamp your authority on that opportunity that you get. Can you look back in your career in one moment that you would feel that you really started to stamp your position and kind of cement it into that Munster squad? Is there anything that stands out to you when it would be?
Yeah, I think you end up getting breaks in your career. It's whether you take them or not. So the ones that stood out for me, the ones where I kicked on, where I got a chance and I kicked on. We played when I was up in Connacht. We played Leinster away, and we beat them. I think it was the first time in 18 or 20 years that Connacht had beaten Leinster. That was a big game for me, and I think that kind of got me on the radar. And I had Leinster speaking to me afterwards about coming to them the following year in Munster. So that was a big opportunity for me. And then when I came down to Munster, I was probably I was far from the finished product, and I was competing with Frankie Sheehan, who was playing fantastic rugby. And then Frankie got an injury, and I got thrown into the Champions Cup team, and I think it was cast in the European Cup was my first start in the European Cup, and that was a big opportunity for me. And I was lucky the team played really well, and I sort of kicked on from there. We went on a good run, and I got into the national setup then, and those two games probably the ones that stand out for me.
And from a mindset perspective, when you approach those situations, knowing that this is your big break, knowing that this is potentially your big opportunity, from a mindset perspective, walking on the field, can you give an example of what elements that you did to help yourself get through that game, or focus to make sure that there's not a fear element and not making mistakes? Was there anything that you can remember that you really tried to focus on to get right from a mindset perspective walking onto the field?
It's a good question. I can think back on comparing the games that went well for me and where my mindset was at going into them versus the games where I didn't take my chances. And I think when I had probably blown opportunities was probably when I went out focusing on what could go wrong and being a bit anxious. And then it was funny. I was living with a guy, Ian Dowling, at the time, and he'd made his debut for Munster. And that week that I was hanging around with him, he kept, it kept being, because he's from Kilkenny, and it's not traditional for Munster to have players playing for them that are from Kilkenny. It was in quite a lot of the national media, and Ian would just keep embracing it and going, ringing his mates in the car and going, "Did you hear this, lads? They're talking about me making my debut for Munster." And I was getting kind of irritated, because I was like, in my head, as silly as it sounds, I was like, I've got more ability than this guy, but I was far more nervous when I was getting an opportunity. And I said, "You're not nervous?" And he just said it so clearly to me. He goes, "Jerry," he goes, "I've never trained as hard as I have over the last 4 months. I'm never going to be as good as I am. Like, this is the best I've ever been at rugby. And he said, the worst thing that's ever happened to me is I got taken off in an under-15s game at halftime because I played poorly and I wasn't trying. He said, the chances of that happening this weekend when I make my debut were very low. And I kind of, I took it with a pinch of salt. But then that weekend, he made his debut for Munster against Scarlets in Musgrave Park, and he was man of the match. And from then, I just said, listen, I'm not going to worry about what could go wrong. I'm only going to focus on doing my job really well and just getting stuck into my opposite number. And seeing how Ian just simplified it, and it just made me focus on, listen, this is the best I can be this week. So if this is my opportunity, I'm going to go out and give the best account of myself. And if it's not good enough, then so be it. And I think that freeing yourself from the fear of making errors is a big part of unlocking good performance.
And do you think that mindset has changed in the 20 years that you've been involved, either on the field or off the field? Because I think it's a fascinating point you make about simplifying it. Do you think that mindset has changed amongst players from when the fear of making a mistake in front of their friends and family to now the professional element to it? Is that still there for some players, do you think?
Yeah, it is for sure. I think it's just a, anxiety is a human trait. It's always there. Where it's probably improved is that the support for players who are coming in playing games now is there. Mental skills coaches, psychologists coming in and making players aware. So listen, you're probably going to feel like this. And I said, but when someone spells out to you, excuse me, like Ian spelled out to me, have you ever trained as hard? And you said, no, I haven't really. And said, well, are you going to try your best? Are you excited about this game? And you said, I absolutely am. So well, then listen, you don't have anything to worry about. You just go out and do your best. And it sounds cliche, but it's quite freeing. So I think that it's definitely there. It happens everyone all the time, no matter what age, no matter what your level of experience is. It's just that people get more comfortable with dealing with it, and I think that there's more support for lads when they're experiencing that for the first few times in their career.
And going back to your own playing career before we move into where you end up from a coaching perspective, but while you were still playing, when you were coming towards the end of your career, when you were battling injuries, etc., what was your thought around coaching? Was it something you saw yourself going in towards, or was it more a case of you just wanted to play as long as you possibly could and you worry about what comes next once you finish?
I certainly wanted to play as long as I could. Unfortunately, I just kept racking up so many injuries. It was sucking a lot of my enjoyment from the game. So I wasn't sure what I was going to do after finishing playing professional rugby. Coaching hadn't been something that was top of the priorities for me. I didn't feel I had a natural aptitude to coach. But it was said to me when I was retiring, a couple of the senior lads in Munster had mentioned to me, some of the senior players said, would you consider it? And I just said, well, look, I said, I've got to go away and upskill. So I went away and did a master's in UL in sports performance. And I kind of fell into it, to be honest. And I kind of fell into it. I got access. I went over to Arsenal. One of my old coaches from Connacht, Des Ryan, had been appointed the head of sports science in Arsenal. I just finished my master's. He said, do you want to come over and just experience a different sporting environment? So I did that for a year. And then I kept, I was always keeping in touch with rugby. I would go down to Harlequins. I spent quite a lot of time at Saracens. I was friends with Phil Morrow, their head of performance, and Mark McCall. They're very, very good to me all the time. Went down to London Irish a little bit, just kept my eye in with rugby. And then Anthony Foley rang me and just said, listen, he said, I'm after getting appointed as head coach in Munster. He said, would you be interested in coming back? And I asked Axel, I said, what would you like me to do? And he said, you could coach the scrum. And, it was daunting for me because, going back into Munster is just like, that's like Munster's the club I love. And I really didn't want to let anyone down. But I thought, like, listen, if I apply myself here, it is a relatively narrow remit. And I felt like the players were there and I had good relationships with them, which obviously changes when you go in coaching. But I said, listen, I'll give it a go. Yeah. So I came back and that was me into coaching then with Munster.
And from your coaching philosophy perspective, from when that scenario where you were going around to different clubs, the Saracens, London Irish, working with Arsenal, and then getting into Munster, do you see yourself now where you are at Harlequins having a different philosophy, not just on the game, but on how you coach? Or is it the same thread, the same skeleton that you would have going through of what you expect from players, what you expect from yourself? Is that stayed the same? You just added little bits to it?
what you said, like the core elements of what I value and what I believe are the key components towards, building a good environment and to getting the best out of people. They haven't changed hugely from when I was a player. What I would say is that as just society is changing and people are changing, you have to adapt with that. And I think I've learned an awful lot from, I suppose, going over to see football, working with young lads in football. And, there's so many different variables there that aren't in rugby. The financial side of it is huge. The early specialization in the sport versus late specialization in rugby. And then just seeing different environments. Like Harlequins is literally chalk and cheese compared to Munster. So you can't be the exact same. You can't be the exact same guy you could be at Munster. You can take elements of what is good about Munster rugby and bring it to Harlequins, but you've got to adapt to the club. The club isn't going to adapt to you. Like, the club has a very strong identity, as does Munster. And I remember, when I came over, I remember speaking to Graham Rowntree, and he kind of spelled it out to me, because he had been coaching at Harlequins. He said that this club is very different to what he would have been used to at Leicester, what I had been used to at Munster. And, if you go into it with an open mind, you really can take a lot out of it. So I've learned a lot there. But the core values that I still, hard work, being honest, like being team first, all those things, like they would never change for me.
I was speaking to Billy Holland in one of the earlier episodes, and he was speaking about how once your playing career finishes, and if you go into another job, another career, that what he noticed when he got there was how beneficial being a rugby player was for him when he went into a work environment, and how to deal with certain scenarios, how to deal with conflicts, how to deal with expectations, and all that kind of things. What he also mentioned is that it was such a structured perspective in sport, that when he went into another profession, he found it a little bit difficult at the start, where people weren't necessarily as driven about the job. They were focused on other things, whether that's money, whether that's holidays, whether that's whatever that looks like. If you're giving advice to the people who are coming to the end of their sporting career, and are not wanting to go into coaching, but wanting to go somewhere else, what attributes from a rugby field or from a sports field do you think that they should bring with them when they start looking at their own career?
I think a lot of the things that, like Billy Holland would be a fantastic example of a guy with so many skills that are really, really transferable, that he took from rugby. He was a fantastic rugby player, but I think the thing that stood out to me was Billy's work ethic. And if you've got a serious work ethic, that gives you a big advantage no matter what industry you're working in, whether it's rugby, whether it's banking, whether it's the arts, anything. Like, if you've got a really good work ethic, and it generally, most people that have a reasonably long career in professional rugby have to have a pretty good work ethic, because there's just so many things that you've got to be self-motivated to do yourself. The things that really make the difference are the things like the things you do away from the pitch, like your recovery, your diet, doing a little bit of analysis. Like, there'll be a certain amount of things that are laid out that you've got to go through in the schedule for each player, but the guys that go well in the game are generally the guys who are self-driven, and they've got a good work ethic. So I think it's difficult for a lot of people when they finish playing, because for most people, I'd say 95% of people who play professional rugby is what they do better than anything else. They're better at rugby than they are at working in a bank. They're better at rugby than they are at being a tradesman or anything like that. So when they finish, they now suddenly have to find something to replace. They've been pretty competent at doing this one job since they were probably 10 years old, really, and then doing it professionally for maybe 10 years if they're fortunate, and then go and try and find something else. For a lot of people, staying within sport is probably the closest thing, because they can take some direct transfer from playing into coaching or into working in management or S&C. But for a lot of other people, if they're going out into the real world, like Billy's points, that you can be like Billy would be incredibly efficient. The thing with rugby is incredibly efficient in getting the work done. The thing with rugby is people have to be pretty thick-skinned, because if I'm missing tackles on a Saturday, I have to be able to be told straight by the coaches on the Tuesday, the Wednesday, and the Thursday the following week. You've got to get this right, or it will hurt the whole team the following Saturday. So you've got to it's got to be, you got to fix things, and you got to fix them fast, and you've got to be, you can't take it personally. Sometimes that, like, having an ability to speak to people with a bit of empathy and to try and gently get those things across when it's not quite the same. I suppose week on week, people get exposed if they don't fix problems in the week. Sometimes these problems can linger a little bit longer. So I think that some of those kind of soft skills are the bits that need to be worked on when you're coming out of professional sport. But I think the work ethic and just getting jobs done is a big part of it.
I always say to people about sport and how it creates memories and creates moments. So sometimes when I ask people the question about what does sport mean to them, they usually tell me about a conversation they would have watched a game where they saw a try, but they can't remember who scored, but they remember their dad was with them, or their brother was with them, or their friends were with them, or who was around them, or who was at that moment. Is there anything in your either playing, watching, or being a coach, a moment that when I said that came straight to your mind, that you went, yeah, that's the one moment I remember across my whole career that stands out above everything else, but it's the first moment I thought of? Is there anything in particular?
There's just so much. It's to boil it down to one moment is difficult, but I could tell you that it's not being on the field at the end of a big win when you've won a cup final. It's more just the crack, the day-to-day fun that you have as a group and the bonds that you build with people. Like, a lot of lads I played with Munster are still my best friends, and I have huge respect for them, and that never diminishes. We have an ex-players WhatsApp group, and they're just those guys are still probably my heroes as well. It's weird. I just love playing with them so much, and all I wanted to do was do my job so that they would respect me. So I think it was just the time that you spend probably privately with them, like whether it's, you'd have good nights out, but like just having the crack, around training sessions, that they're the things that I love the most about being part of that professional setup at Munster.
And then going into the future. So everyone's talking about future sport and where's it going after the pandemic, and whether it's people watch sport in completely different ways now. The NFL has found 4 or 5 different ways for you to watch, streaming, all that kind of things. From your perspective, from a coach's perspective, there's been a lot of movement as well, with a lot of introductions of different ways of analysing players, analysing opposition. Where do you see the next kind of steps from a coaching perspective or a playing perspective when it comes not just to rugby but across all sports? Is it something that you think it's going to level off now, or is there another development that you can see coming that is going to happen in the next couple of years?
I think technologically you can guarantee that it's going to keep progressing, that the technological side of things in how you analyze and in how they break things down and that's going to keep progressing, because that's what happens. That's happened all the way through sport. I think that the bit that is probably the most important is just on how people connect, how coaches connect with players, how players connect with players, because that's actually the real magic. Like I said to you, the stuff that really that stands out for me from my playing career is the connection I have with teammates and with former coaches, guys who helped me. So I think that is it. Like the better you become at connecting with people, and some people are natural at it. Some people are really, really good. They're really charismatic, and they make you feel special when you're around them. Some people have to work a little bit harder at it, and I think that when that gets probably analyzed a bit more, that's the real bit. That's like technology is definitely going to progress, but I think the key thing around all sports is going to be how you build a relationship with player coach relationship, player relationship. I think that's the real key part of it. I see from my own, when I played, the mental side of things, the psychology side of things was massive compared to when I first played, and I think that's really it, because humans are, they're going to stay humans, and whilst technology can probably keep us a little bit more disconnected at the moment in society, I think that trying to get teams to operate at a high level is about bringing them together and getting them to connect with each other. I know it sounds a bit wishy-washy, but that's what I feel.
I love that answer, and I love the fact that you see it as not just about learning more. How far can you run? How fast can you run? How bigger can you get? How stronger can you get? It's more about what little bits inside your head. Because I'm assuming, and maybe it's an assumption that's wrong, but 99% of professional sports people, whatever sport they're in, are at a certain level. You don't get to be a professional sports player without being at that level. And what makes the elite ones, the ones that go over the top, are those people who are able to understand the dynamics, not just of the game, but of their opposition, of their teammates, of the scenario, and make good decisions and then good important moments. From a perspective of off the field, so from commercially, but from a branding perspective, etc., that's the people that people want to be engaged with and feel connected to and feel associated with. That, I believe, is the future as well. I believe the future is knowing the individual and almost having a one-on-one conversation. So you get to learn who Jerry Flannery is, or you get to learn who certain players are. So you get to understand what they are and understand what they do, and then roll in the importance of female sport and roll in the importance of all those things to brands and opportunities that are there for clubs as well to understand where they can sit. I think that's massively important. I always finish off with this one thing, which is kind of top 10. It's a quick fire questions. It's not anything to catch you out. Don't worry, I won't ask you anything about Chelsea. I promise you, as a West Ham fan, I wouldn't even dare. So it's a real quick fire one. It'll only be 4 or 5 little questions on it. Netflix or the cinema?
Cinema.
What's the last thing you saw?
I went to, is it Killing of the Flower Moon? Is that what it was? The new Scorsese movie. I fell asleep anyway. I fell asleep before the movie even started, but I like the cinema.
Burger and chips or Sunday roast?
Sunday roast.
Best stadium you've ever been at?
I think the Principality Stadium in Wales.
Nearly everybody has answered that. Best holiday destination?
I love Spain. Love going to Spain with the kids and my wife.
What does a day off look like for you?
Well, today was a day off for me. So I got up, helped get the kids out to school, get the baby out to nursery. Then I had to review training from yesterday, send out a couple of clips, do some laundry, pretty boring stuff. And then I went training. I'm going to have some food and go and get a haircut. And then I'm going to collect the kids. That's it.
That's the reason I asked that, is because so many people don't realize what's normal is actually good. And that's an important distinction. Last one for you. Best definition you could give of what sport means to Jerry Flannery?
I think it's the best definition. I think it's connection. It's about feeling that you're working with other people to achieve something big, and it's about feeling that you're part of the team. So I think the connection with the people that I work with is very important for me. Was when I played, it is still the same thing when I coach. I just, whether you win or lose, you can't win all the time, but if you feel that everyone is trying their best and everyone's working towards a goal, I love that.
Jerry, best of luck for the rest of the season with Harlequins. Enjoy London. Enjoy being there, and obviously seeing you on the TV whenever I can. Whenever I seem to turn on, I either see you or a former teammate of yours on the TV. So it's great to see you all flying in. So thank you so much for your time. I really, really do appreciate it, my man. Thank you so much.
Welcome. Cheers, Ant. Thanks, bud.
Now that was brilliant. Because what the insight I hope you got into that was how you look at a mindset rather than just looking at, I want to go out and feel and perform. I think the story Jerry told about Ian Dowling and how Ian simplified it and simplified the whole conversation to him, so it allowed him to focus on what he was good at rather than the anxiety and the nervousness that's there. And why do I say that? Because that can be rolled into any business, that can be rolled into any organization, that can be rolled into any job, where somebody looks at their role and goes, oh my God, I've got such and such to do now. I've got a sponsorship contract to sign off on. I've got all these different things to do. But if you simplify it and just follow your feet and follow the next step and what can I do right in the next 6-12 hours, that's what you're going to achieve. I think a lot of people look at sports people in a way of this demigod perspective and almost forget that they're also humans. And I think that was a really interesting part of what Jerry said about how you really need to focus on it and create lasting relationships that are there. And those relationships then are taken on for himself when he's on his WhatsApp group, or when he goes to meet the guys in Limerick, or when he's at different games, or when he's got there. And then that also builds as teams go past. I think that's a really interesting part of what he said. Look, absolutely delighted to have him on. Thank you all for coming on and looking at different episodes. I've got some more coming up as well. Please do, all my details are at the bottom. Please do look into that. If you want to know more about what I can do at AMSC, what we can do, if you're a club, if you're a federation or a brand, please don't hesitate to give me a shout. My details are at the bottom, as I said, or you can just look up the YouTube clip or look up www.amsc.se. Until then, thank you so much for coming along. Enjoy yourselves. Stay safe. Thanks again.